In terms of waste, I think we have decided many years ago not to consider waste a problem, but to make it an opportunity and to make it a commodity. Because if you look at it in that way, then you have incentives for citizens for recycling, you have incentives for business to use waste to develop new technologies, etc., etc. So I think that's part of it. Let me also say that we started many years ago to have quite strict spatial planning, which led to legislation. That also meant that we very quickly abandoned landfills. So I think currently we only have 5% landfill, and only for waste which cannot otherwise be recycled. So it has been a long-term process in which both politicians, institutions, municipalities, of course, and citizens are committed.
Okay, can we define approximately that long time? Or are we talking about a decade, a quarter of a century, half a century?
I would say a quarter of a century, which I think also brings good prospects for Asia to get there. We started our spatial planning in the 1970s. We may later get back also to waste to energy and district heating, but these facilities were already started in the 50s, but we can get back to that later.
Okay, in my speech earlier, in my announcement, I mentioned problems. Of course, everybody has problems, so does Denmark. Namely, near the Danish village of Øst, if I pronounce it correctly, in the north of the country, where about 400 people live, a slide occurred, a landslide of, how should we say, garbage. What happened?
Yeah, what happened 3 months ago was a landslide. You can say, compare it perhaps a little bit what happened in Zagreb recently, but the difference being that this was not a landfill as such. This was a big area where we deposited certain sorts of soil which needed to be treated. So it was not ordinary waste, but it was special soil from mink farms, from incinerators, from others. And unfortunately, because of heavy flooding, this whole pile of basically dirty soil started moving close to a nearby village. Things are now under control, but it was, I think, a warning also for us in Denmark that we have to be very careful on anything which is related to waste, because waste is of course also, as I said, an opportunity and a commodity, but it is also something which is dangerous, potentially unhealthy, toxic, etc. So we need to deal with it.
How this problem will be solved in a long-term aspect? Okay, you said now that currently there is no problem, the situation is under control. You mentioned that also in Zagreb we had a landslide, which was, okay, different types of garbage, soil, or whatever you want to call it. So how will you set this problem aside for the long term, and will somebody answer for it?
It's a good question, and I think we can all learn from this. The truth is, and this is public in our media, that the municipality had a role which they didn't take seriously enough. So if you as a municipality has a role for controlling, you should exercise that. And that didn't happen, let's say, sufficiently. So if the municipality in question had been more strict on their controls, it would not have happened. So it's not that the legislation was not in place, it's not that the safe was as such insecure, but there were warnings which unfortunately were not, let's say, caught by the municipality. So I think that is the sort of conclusion that you have to have rules and you have to follow up on these rules.
Yeah, I think something similar was said after the inspection in Zagreb and Kushel. Some things didn't happen strictly enough in the past. So, okay,